Larry Kudlow here for Colonial Metals Group. Ask yourself, is your retirement protected? Gold is the one asset that's surged through every war and economic shock. Please call 800-621-3908. That's 800-621-3908. Or just visit freegoldguide.com/Kudlow to claim your free 2025 gold guide. You'll learn how to protect your IRA or 401k and could qualify for up to $7,500 in free silver. That's freegoldguide.com/Kudlow.
The John Sterling Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, what an intro, huh? Who would ever think an intro would go that long? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Sterling. We have our hour show, which I adore, here at WABC. And we have two great guests coming up. You're going to hear a lot of great conversation. And it's coming in a moment. First of all, today, John Robnett joins us behind the glass. Hi, John. As I said before, I'll never forget your name. Jonas Jackson is in his normal spot behind the glass, and our executive producer is Rich Rattabali. And I have to talk, obviously, about the Yankees and Mets, who are both have good teams. The Mets have a better team, but they're losing every day. I am happy to report the Yankees in the seventh inning against Houston are winning 4-2. But anyway, here's what I have to say. The Mets, they are confounding. Why? Because they're really good. They're not hitting a lick. And I say to you, you know, I've been involved in baseball since I was 8 years old. Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Starling Marte. Those are the top six hitters. Wow. What a top six. First of all, in that six, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, they're big-time hitters. Nimmo is a guy who gets on base and is going to hit about 20 home runs. He already has. And Starling Marte is just a good hitter. Now, why does that team not hit? That's why I say they're confounding. And the Braves, the Mets have lost 9 out of 10. And even though they're in the playoffs, but they're in the last playoff spot, third at the present time. And I'm going to say the same thing about the Mets that I am about the Yankees. Hey, they better start winning some games. You know, all this palaver that you hear about on the talk shows and on the Internet, I guess. I don't know what happens on the Internet. I'm not a part of that. But it's okay to say, we have a really good team. Well, we're going to start. Well, you better start soon because already you're 4 games behind the Phils in the East. As I say, they do have the third playoff spot, but you know what? Cincinnati is not very far behind, so the Mets obviously have to get going. As I mentioned, they've lost 9 of their last 10 games. That's good compared to the Yanks. Do you know the Yankees have a record of 19-30 in their last 49 games? And that's not a slump. I mean, that's telling you, hey, you're not very good. Now, can they change? Yeah, they have a lot of good players on their team. Obviously, they need Judge to come back and start hitting, and Stanton, who did play the outfield today. But if you're 19-30, that's 49 games. 1/3 of the season is 54. So they're 5 games away from 1/3 of the. Imagine losing 30 out of your 49 games, and if you say, well, they're not in first, they're not close to first place. Toronto, I have the standings right in front of me here. Toronto now leads the Yankees by 6.5, and the Red Sox in second place. The Yankees lead the Yankees by 3.5. And you know what? That's a lot if you're not going to win your game. So, I mean, it sounds so simplistic. I'm telling them, yeah, go win your games. But the other team is trying to win too. And on the show previous to this, the left versus the right, one of the two, I think it was Patterson. I love the show. I get a kick out of it every time I'm here. He said, this is about politics. I think it may have been Curtis who said this, that really the political arena doesn't start percolating till Labor Day. And you know what? The great pirate, Willie Stargell, Pops of the We Are Family Pirates, Willie Stargell and the Pirates were at that point in a pennant race every year. And Willie Stargell said the pennant race begins September 1st. So that's pretty much what the Politico said in the show before me. I can understand it. And the story that I have for you, well, I got my first big job in Baltimore. I had been on the air for a few years. I was in a small market, Providence. I got my first big break in Baltimore with a talk show, general talk show, like World War III. And I went there in 1964. But I went there in September when they wanted me to come down, but they weren't going to start my show until the beginning of October, after baseball finished. Well, the Yankees were 6 games out. And this is September 1st. This is August 9th. A lot of time left. And the Yanks were 6 out. And frankly, I had nothing to do. Oh, every now and then I'd read a newscast for the station, but my show was going to begin in early October. And it turned out to be very, very successful, thank goodness. But in the meantime, I had nothing to do but root for the Yankees. That was if you say, well, what was your job? That was my job. I followed it in excruciating fashion on a day-by-day basis. And the Yankees, in their last hurrah, 1964 was their last hurrah. The next year, they tumbled off the face of the earth. But they started to win, continued to win, and by the end of the month, they caught up to both Chicago and Baltimore, and on the last couple of days of the season, they won the pennant. As I said, that was their last hurrah. They did lose to the Cards in the World Series in 7 games, but they played without their number 1 pitcher, Whitey Ford, and they played without their number 1 shortstop, Tony Kubek. And 64 to now is 61 years ago, and I still remember it in detail. So I guess what I'm saying is, if they start playing well, Yankees and Mets, they still have time to, Aaron Boone because Aaron Boone never says exactly what he feels, but Aaron Boone has a line. He'll say, well, if we want to go where we want to go where we want to go, that means get the pennant. And then if we want to do what we want to do, that means win the World Series. So anyway, with that in mind, and with the story I told you, the Yankees being 6 games out on September 1st of 64 and won it, so that can still happen. Well, our guests are coming up here at 77 WABC, and we'll have our first guest on in just a couple of minutes. We'll take care of a little business, and then we'll get right back with you on 77 WABC.
The John Sterling Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The John Sterling Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, I mentioned about the Yankees and Mets. They still have a chance. They're playing so badly. But I was saying things that really not very deep. In other words, hit better, pitch better, feel better. But with the Yankees, I can actually tell Aaron Boone something. I wonder if he's listening. He's a good friend. And I'm going to tell him, don't pitch Devin Williams. Okay? I know you want to, but don't. Don't. Okay, that's my great advice for Booney. Let's get on the phone with a buddy of mine for many, many years. His name is Tom Brenneman. And hello, Tom. How you doing?
Hello, Mr. Sterling. How are you, young man? It's always nice to hear your voice.
Boy, I love the young man.
Of course you do.
I really do.
Of course you do. I'm getting to a point where, hell, I'm almost at a point where I like hearing young man.
Yeah. Tom Brenneman is a long-time broadcaster of the Cincinnati Reds. His dad was their number one voice for so long, Marty Brenneman. And Tom has also been a network broadcaster in football and basketball. He's done a whole bunch of things. What do you think? He's a Cincinnati native. What did you think of Tito Francona coming to Cincinnati? And they are playing better. Is there a little excitement there because of Tito?
Oh, of course. I think everybody, that follows baseball, I think, was surprised that the Reds had gone out and spent that kind of money on a manager. They did it once before, many years ago, when they hired Dusty Baker off the free agent market. And Dusty came in here and, won a couple of division titles, got the team to the playoffs 3 years in a row, and times have been pretty lean ever since. But Francona, he played for the Reds. He really enjoyed his time here in Cincinnati. He's been up in Cleveland, as you know, the last number of years, and so he's got a good feel, I think, for the Midwest and the people in the Midwest, and I think he feels very comfortable here. They're playing well. They're not playing necessarily well right now. They've lost back-to-back games to the Pirates after beating the Chicago Cubs, a team ahead of them in the standings, 2 out of 3 at Wrigley Field to begin the week. But they're having a good year. They're in the playoff hunt. I don't know if they have enough to get in, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, people are very excited about having him here, no doubt about it.
Well, he's a terrific manager. Yeah. And also, as you know, he's a really good guy.
Oh, yeah, there's not a better guy. My 31 years broadcast in Major League Baseball, I could count on one hand of my 5 favorite guys, and he in uniform, and he's certainly in that top 5. What a great, great guy.
He is indeed, and he obviously knows how to get the best out of his players. I always wonder, Tommy, you've been at so long too, what does a manager do? And what makes one guy a good manager and another guy a bad manager? Now, before I have you answer, the first thing is players. If you don't have players, you're not going to win anyway.
Right. Well, you look no further than Joe Torre, right? He had a chance to manage a couple of different places, fired, comes to New York, great players, and they win multiple World Series. Francona's no different. He started in Philadelphia, got fired. He goes to Boston, wins 3 World Series, goes to Cleveland, where they didn't have as many good players, but they had a pretty good group coming up at the same time. Jose Ramirez, Francisco Lindor. It was a pretty talented team, and they won a lot of games. They didn't get to the World Series, but they won a lot. And now he's coming to Cincinnati. A lot of young, like Cleveland when he first got there, a whole core of young, talented players, especially the pitchers. And so he's seeing results of that. But, I don't buy into, John, all these numbers people and the analytics that tell you, that managers don't mean anything. There's a reason why, and it's not just because it's players, because you go through guys that were hanging around long enough, you go through sort of waves of players. Some stick around longer than others. But you look at Tony La Russa, everywhere the guy went until the bitter end, everywhere he went, he won games. And there's a reason for that. And I think that maybe he illustrated for me better than anybody in all the years I was doing playoff games for Fox or playing inside the division against his teams and got to know him pretty well. Some people liked him, some people don't. I happen to like him, and I respect him. It's accountability. I think one of the reasons David Bell got fired here, I think David Bell knows as much about baseball as anybody. His grandfather, Gus Bell, his dad, Buddy Bell. I mean, this guy grew up inhaling baseball. I'm not sure there's anybody out there that knows the X's and O's of baseball better than David Bell. But he always kowtowed to the players. He always made excuses to the players, as opposed to guys like La Russa, Torrey, who would hold players accountable and make them understand hustle is not an option. Stupid base running, not knowing how many outs there are. All these people are going to make outs at the plate. People are going to make defensive miscues. Those things are going to happen. But it's all about preparation, being ready to play. And when he writes your name in a lineup, you better be ready to go, or, your tail's going to be sitting down on the bench.
I can't tell you, Tom, how many people in New York would stand up and cheer when you said all those things, because that's what they knock Aaron Boone about. Now, Boone says, well, you don't know what goes on in the locker room. In other words, he does hold players accountable, but people don't think that. And because when Boone does his shows, and boy, that's a tough thing to do. He has 2 shows a day with the New York media. And what he does is, nothing is bad. No player is bad.
Yeah,
they didn't do anything wrong. No, they're close, So, what you just said, boy, a lot of people in New York agree with you.
Well, look, and look, he's become pretty much like the norm. It's rare to find a guy anymore. It's rare to find anybody anymore that's going to, whether it's agents, whether it's general managers, whether it's owners. I mean, look, you see this stuff all the way down to the broadcasters of teams now, where, you can't say anything bad about a player or a team. And it's because, these owners of the team, they think their fan base is stupid or they're a bunch of idiots and that they can't, listen with their own ears or watch with their own eyes what's going on out there. And you're supposed to be painting this picture on the radio or people watching on TV of Shangri-La. Well, clearly it's not Shangri-La if all of a sudden you go from being first and you're 15 over and now you're in third and you're 5 over and you're wondering you're going to make the playoffs. So, I'm not surprised that managers are like that. They're hiring a bunch of young managers who, are in some cases a handful of years older than some of their players. They're not going to say anything. And so I think baseball's really missing those guys. And I think that these players are being cheated by not having guys like that. Because I think there's still a lot of them in the minor leagues that are like that. But when they get to the big leagues, man, it's, hey, go out there and keep trying hard. Go get them.
Well, I don't think it's any question that anyone who's a little older does not like the way baseball is being played or managed. The fact that these pitchers only go 5 innings or 6 innings, so you've got to fill with the bullpen every day. No wonder the bullpens get exhausted, and no wonder there's so many arm problems. Right.
Well, I used to, when Greg Maddux first came up with the Cubs, I was announcing the Cubs games at the time, and Maddux had such a huge intellect for the art of pitching. I mean, an IQ off the charts. And he was the first guy I ever heard say this. It's not to say that he's the first guy that ever did say it, but he used to talk about it all the time, that you never really learn how to become a pitcher until you hit the 100 pitch mark and you've got 2 on and nobody out in the 6th or 7th inning. That's when you learn how to pitch, not just throw. And people forget Maddux threw a lot harder than most remember as his career went on. When he first came up to the big leagues, he wasn't a 95 mile per hour guy, but he had, back in the 90s, late 80s, throwing 91, 92 is pretty good giddy up, nothing like today. But, then you look at guys that, I'm just talking about guys that I was around. I'm not leaving anybody off this conversation, but another guy who, again, a lot of Yankee fans don't like, I got to know him very well in our time in Arizona together, was Curt Schilling. Incredible intellect for pitching, great big game pitcher, arguably one of the top 3 big game pitchers in the history of Major League Baseball. And, it used to make him nuts. And, you look at some of these. I remember last year, Blake Snell is here in Cincinnati pitching for the Giants. He throws a no-hitter. It happened to be the first complete game of his Major League career. Throws a no-hitter. He had won the Cy Young Award in the National League the season before without a complete game. Not that that's a big surprise. But he got mad when the press asked him, hey, this is your first complete game. And here this guy should be celebrating throwing a no-hitter, and he's melting down that people are asking him about his first complete game. I don't know, John. I don't want to sound like an old man.
But I sound that way too, and I could tell you 100 things that is wrong with baseball, and that's one of them. I think the fact that they're not encouraged to bunt and move runners. Yankees and Mets leave a lot of guys on base. They have a lot of good hitters, but they don't deliver the hit with men on base. And it's changed. And by the way, Tom, I know you know this. It's changed for broadcasters too. They kind of elbow us away. They don't let us get as close. It was very different, quote unquote, in the old days.
Yeah, very different. I was talking about this with a buddy of mine having a beer the other night. The guy who eventually became my broadcast partner in Arizona. But I was a broadcaster for the Cubs prior to that, and he was a player for the Cubs. Great player, Mark Grace. And I remember, we were roughly about the same age when I was announcing the Cubs games. I think he was 25, I was 26, and I mean, in those days, you'd go out with a player, you'd have a few beers with the players after the game, whatever the case may be, or you'd run into them at a place having a beer. Now I think it's, John, it's so much more social media. I mean, for example, you think about a player, let's say, in New York City, more so New York because of the amount of people, the amount of press, so on and so forth. And let's say that a player walked in, met some buddy of his that he went to college with in, let's say, Toronto. Let's say Tampa. He goes into a bar in Tampa. Yankees get in on a Sunday night. This guy is a pitcher or a position player. He goes out and he's sitting in a bar, and somebody on social media takes his picture, and they have a picture of Joe Blow sitting at a bar on a Sunday night. Okay, well, the next day Joe Blow makes an error that costs the Yankees the game. Well, what's going to happen? Somebody's going to post it on the internet. The Joe Blow cost the Yankees a game, and that bum was in the bar the night before on a Sunday night drinking, right? So they don't do anything anymore. And they sit in their room and play video games all night after a game.
Oh, it's changed.
So, it's really changed.
It really is. And you'll have to come on again and we'll just do analytics. Which to me is like a dirty word.
I'm with you. It's brutal. It's brutal. And when I'm watching a baseball game, and I'm not suggesting for a second that I am a better announcer, a worse announcer, the same announcer as a lot of the guys doing it now. Very talented guys out there. But it's funny, all the years that I was with Fox, Major League Baseball, and of course had a chance to do the game of the week for years and years and years, did a multiple playoff series. I had a chance to call the Jeter flip in the series against Oakland, did a lot of Yankee playoff games, Mets playoff games. And we would have this baseball seminar every year. And Fox would hire out this research firm, and they would sit down a focus group of baseball fans. They did this every single year, and then the results of that would be a presentation at this Fox baseball seminar. And every single year, they would ask this study group, to write down, number one, the most important thing, and they'd give them 30 items to pick from, and rank in priority for them what is the most important part for you as a fan of the broadcast watching a Major League Baseball game. Analytics never finished higher than 28th. Not one time.
Love it.
Never finished higher than 28th. And yet every single broadcast I watch or listen, which is infrequent, I don't watch a lot of games much anymore, because the second a guy hits a home run, instead of being excited, it is high, it is gone, okay? The old John Sterling, the second, instead of the emotion of it, the crowd, all of that, reactions from the pitcher, reactions from the batter, runner, manager. I'm being told the exit velo, and I'm being told the launch angle.
I'm with you. Look, you know this. I'm with you 100%. In a Dan Shaughnessy column in the Globe, he was talking about analytics, how terrible it is, and Tony Gwynn, and he said, Tony Gwynn hit 388 one year, and Shaughnessy said, boy, I bet his exit velo was lousy. Which is true if you think of Wade Boggs, Rod Carew, Tony Gwynn, and people like that. Anyway.
Absolutely. Just be flipping the ball in the left field as a left-handed batter. Exit velo is probably about 78. But the next thing you know, he's standing on first and coming around to score, later in the inning.
Go ahead. You must come on again, okay?
Love to.
Okay. We'll be in touch, and I'm here every week from 4 to 5, and you must come on again. Thank you, Tom.
I would love to, John. You're the best. God bless you, buddy. Great to talk to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We are going to break for a moment, do a little business, and then get back with another great guest you will love, guest you've been listening to for years, and you love him. That's upcoming. And where is it upcoming, John? Oh, it's upcoming at 77 WABC.
The John Sterling Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The John Sterling Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Unfortunately, the guest who was going to be on has not been contacted by radio, so by telephone. So we'll keep it up. In the meantime, I'll talk to myself, which is really very boring, but I'll work it out. Tom Brennan was talking about the great days of the past, and my favorite Yankee year. Now, don't forget, I didn't miss a game. I didn't miss a game from my first Atlanta Hawks broadcast, which was the beginning of November of 1981. And then, I got the Yankee job in 89. And the only time I missed a game, I missed 2 games in my first year, my sister passed away. And, and I said, that's not missing a game. That's a death in the family. But anyway, that was early. 1996 was my favorite year. I'm looking at something. That's why I stopped. Yeah, that was Grisham. Grisham just hit a home run for the Yankees to give them a 5-4 lead in the 8th inning. Whoa, what a big home run. The Yankees had blown the lead. Anyway, Joe Torre was the manager, and here's a friend of mine being the manager of the team. How great was that? And talk about access. And the team was really not expected to be great or do any great things. But somehow they found a spirit and they started to win. And they played 2 games in Baltimore at the end of April, beginning of May, 2 unbelievably long games, extra inning. And the Yankees won them both and went into first place, and they stayed in first place for the entire year. And even though they had a 10, 11, 12-game lead, it came down to about 2 games in September. And David Cohn, who hadn't pitched, he had an aneurysm operation, and he hadn't pitched in 4 months, and it was in Oakland, I think on Labor Day, because it was an afternoon game. And David Cohn pitched a no-hitter for 7 innings. And in the last inning against Mariano, someone hit a weak ground ball to third, and the throw to first just missed him. And Derek Jeter said for so long afterwards, you got to call him out. I mean, it was so close, so bang, bang. You got to call him out. They might have had a no-hitter. But anyway, they won the game and then clinched the pennant in September and went to the playoffs. And every playoff game was so exciting. First of all, the Yankees won almost all their games in the playoffs late. They were losing in the 7th, 8th, 9th innings. Amazing. And they came from behind all the time. And in the first series, they played Texas and lost the first game. And this is a 3 out of 5. And the next game at Yankee Stadium, they're down 4-1. Ken Hill's pitching for Texas. And the Yankees rallied. They got to run here. They got to run there. Then in the 8th inning, Tino Martinez got on, Bernie Williams got on base. And Tino hit a long fly down the left field line. It was caught by Rusty Greer. And what do you think Bernie did? He tagged up. And he just beat the throw to second. And then a base hit scored him. And the Yankees wound up winning in extra innings. And they went back to Texas. And they're losing 2-1 in the 9th inning. Now, if they lose the game, they're down 2-1 in a best of 5, and they have to win the final 2 games in Texas, and the Yankees had been playing terribly in Texas. They never won there. So they played the first of 3 games in Texas, and the Yankees were down 2-1 going to the 9th inning. And Derek Jeter led off with a base hit. And Tim Raines came up, and Joe Torre said, bunt, but bunt toward third and bunt like you're trying for a base hit. And they wanted to do that because in the last game that the Yankees won in extra innings, the third baseman, Dean Palmer, threw a ball away, and the Yankees thought he might have a bad shoulder. So they wanted Raines to bunt to third. And Raines tried, and he fouled off 2 pitches. So now it's 0-2. And then Tim Raines did what Tim Raines does so great. Why he's in the Hall of Fame. He fouled off a pitch. He took a ball. He fouled off a pitch. He took a ball. And the count went to 3-2. And Joe Torre and his faithful lieutenant, Don Zimmer, believed in pushing the old envelope. And they sent Jeter. So they sent Jeter a line drive caught by the infield as a double play. And basically the game is over. But Raines lined a base hit to left center. Jeter was at third. He was running on the play, and he was at third before you know it. And Bernie Williams hit a sac fly, and the game was tied. And then Fielder hit a slow ground ball, and it moved the base runner to second base. And Mariano Duncan was the hitter. They brought in their closer, Mike Henneman, and Duncan, on the first pitch, lined a ball to left center field for a base hit, and the lead run scored. So now it's 3-2 Yankees. And later, see, this is what I meant before when I talked to Tom Brenneman and how it's so different for the media, for the broadcasters. They push you away. They don't want you to get too close. They don't. But in this case, we were all friends. And so after the game, I went to Mariano Duncan in the locker room, and I said, wow, that was a big hit. He said, look, Henneman throws a forkball or a splitter. And he said, so I knew he was going to throw me a forkball on the first pitch. It was up a little bit, and he lined the base hit. And then the next day, the Yankees were behind in the third inning or fourth inning, and Juan Gonzalez was up with first and second, no one out, and he had hit a home run almost every time at bat. The Yankees couldn't get him out. So they brought in David Weathers, and the count went to 3-2, and Weathers threw a slider away, and Juan Gonzalez chased it. It was a ball. He chased it. So there's one out. Now Will Clark comes up. He's a left-hand hitter, first and second, and Weathers threw a sinker. And a right-hand sinker breaks away from the left-hand hitter. What the left-hand hitter should do is go with it and go to the opposite field. But Clark swung, and he had a ground ball to Jeter. And Jeter stepped on second, threw to first for the double play. The Yankees were out of the inning, and they went on to win the game. Bernie Williams had 2 home runs in that game, and the Yankees won it and moved on to the next playoff series. Now, what happened in that playoff series? Well, you got to stay tuned, and I'll let you know. By the way, we are going to the 77 WABC ActionCarting.com phone, New York City's premier waste and recycling provider, and we will get back with more in just a moment on 77 WABC.
The John Sterling Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The John Sterling Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, of course, crazy things happen, especially in broadcasting, and my guest is now here, so here's what I'll tell you. Remember where we left off. Now, the Yankees beat Texas in the first round of the playoffs in '96, and we will go on to Baltimore, the Jeffrey Mayer game, and then, of course, the World Series against Atlanta. But now, it is time to go to the 77 WABC ActionCarting.com phone line, New York City's premier waste and recycling provider. Well, I told you you're going to love this guest. He is the longtime voice of the New York Mets, Howie Rose. Howie, how you doing?
I'm all right, John. How are you? Good to hear from you.
Well, it's nice to hear from you. We wondered why is he not there? Why is he not there?
I don't know. This forcocked the phone. I'm sitting right here, and I didn't hear it ring. So finally, on whatever it was for you guys, third or fourth attempt, you made it.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. A wonderful friend of mine for all these years. Howie, how many years has it been you with the Mets?
Well, I started doing pre and post in 1987, and then a couple of years later began to fill in on play-by-play on radio, and did that for a while. Eventually went to the cable package on Sports Channel in 96. So, I dated back to 1987, and you'll note, of course, that the most recent Mets World Championship was the year before that, the year before I got there. So I don't have to remind myself. Others do that for me.
Well, the New York Rangers have won one Stanley Cup in 85 years.
Yep.
So don't worry too much about your weight. And now you look at all the people who are killing the Yankees because they've had to wait for 15 years or so.
Yeah, this is 16 years since they last won. That's a famish in the desert right there, isn't it?
It is. Well, let's talk about our teams. I did it at the very beginning. The Yankees and Mets are both playing just terrible baseball. And I mentioned, Howie, that the Mets are the confounding team. Because when you line up Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Alonso, McNeil, and Marte, whoa.
Yeah.
That's a great... Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't understand how it's happened all at once, that everybody's gone into a prolonged slump the way they have. And it's, as you say, confounding, unpredictable, and obviously unsustainable. I mean, they've got to get that going, but they've also got to get length from their starting pitchers, because you can't keep getting 15-plus outs from your bullpen every night. And last night was yet another example. So, although the bullpen did reasonably well last night, you just can't count on them to be doing that night after night after night. It takes an effect.
Well, of course, that's one reason why. Look, baseball has changed from the time that we fell in love with it, but you can't go to the bullpen for 3-4 innings every single night and not have problems. And let's face it, every team does. Look at all the pitching injuries.
Well, that's a whole other topic because we've gone so far beyond what reality should be, having to do with keeping pitchers healthy. And they know the problem. These guys don't get hurt in the major leagues. They get hurt years before they ever get to the big leagues. And it all starts with, max effort, spinning the ball at a very young age, stuff that when I was playing a Little League, we were forbidden to try to do. Not that I could have done it anyway, but that's another issue. The point is that between the showcases, kids playing year-round, travel ball, and everything else, they're working their arms to the point where these injuries may manifest at the big league level, but the roots are years before they reach that.
Do you think this trying to throw 100 miles an hour, and many do, and even go up a little above it, that could be a big reason why there's so many arm injuries?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it. And there used to be a phrase associated with pitchers where they would learn to add and subtract.
Yeah.
You would have, you'd know what you would have in the tank and how much you have in reserve and when you needed to use it, because the mindset was, I'm going 7, 8, 9 innings today, and I've got to conserve and I've got to work hitters in such a manner that I'm going to show them something different the second, third, and fourth time around. Now, if you get to the lineup the third time and you're allowed to pitch through, you pass out cigars. And it's just the thing that bothers me about it, and you could certainly relate to it, of course, is there was a time not all that long ago when starting pitchers drove the gate. You get up in the morning and see, hey, Seaver's pitching against Carlton tonight. I want to go. Or some similar matchup.
Right.
It doesn't exist anymore. Even if you have two terrific pitchers starting against each other. You had Scherzer Kershaw last night. That's an exception. You had Skubal and Wheeler a few days ago. Last weekend, I think it was. That's an exception. But they don't make it to the 8th or 9th inning anyway. No.
In fact, they're being congratulated if they get through the 6th inning.
Yep.
Yep. No, it's unbelievable. And it's very much non-baseball. I'll give you a stat. You could give me 100 stats. I'll give you one that I can remember. A catfish hunter signed by the Yankees, and he was a terrific guy, and he knew that he had signed this enormous contract, the biggest then in baseball, and he had to contribute. Do you know, Howie, in his first year, he threw 34 complete games?
Oh, I remember, yeah. I remember very well.
34.
And,
you can watch baseball forever and not see 34 complete games.
Well, we had the anniversary of a game, I guess it was about 6 weeks ago. I forget the exact date. I think it was about the first week of July, actually, when Warren Spahn and Juan Marichal hooked up at, I think it was a Candlestick. I don't remember now if it was a Candlestick or in Milwaukee, but I think it was a Candlestick. But anyway, Marichal and Spahn go to the 16th inning, scoreless. Willie Mays wins it with a home run. So the Giants win 1-0 in 16 innings, 2 complete games. Marichal pitched through 227 pitches, and Spahn threw a little over 200. Now, Marichal pitched effectively for another 10 years, and Warren Spahn that day was 42 years old. And the same night that we talked about that on the air, Clay Holmes got a great ovation going to the dugout because he was lifted after, are you ready for this? 6 innings and 90 pitches or whatever it was. So there's as graphic an illustration as I can provide.
And you talk about pitchers getting to the 6th inning. It's amazing. Once they start to face the lineup for the 3rd time, whoa, the people fall apart. We can go on and do this, but I'll go on to other areas. One thing I mentioned, Howie, about the Mets have, I think, just a terrific 6 hitters. And after that, they have the kids. And there's one thing about their kids. I know they haven't hit yet on a consistent basis, but Alvarez, Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, one thing they can all do? They can hit the ball out. They all have great power.
Well, ideally, yeah. And I've had a few people in the organization point to the thought that Mauricio probably has the highest offensive upside as all of them all. And, again, they're still trying to figure it out. And I don't know at this point whether any of them are going to be, and I'll take Alvarez out of the conversation here because he is their first-string catcher now and for at least the foreseeable future. But Beatty, Mauricio, and even Vientos after the great year last year, nothing's set in stone with them. So if this season progresses the way it's gone lately, whether they make the postseason or not, and none of those aforementioned three players really latch onto a successful everyday run for a while, I don't know. Maybe they look for a third baseman during the winter. Hard to tell. They could all make it. None of them could make it.
Yeah. The funny thing about Mauricio, you mentioned that he probably has the highest upside. This means nothing because it's only one at bat. But you guys were in Colorado, and he hit a home run in the upper deck. Yeah. Wow, what a home run! But I mean, that's every now and then, right?
He hits it harder than any of them on average, and on balance. He's, as I say, a guy who they feel has tremendous upside, partially because of his great bat speed and how hard he hits it. But he's young and he's raw, so he chases a lot and he's undisciplined, and he's got to get that under control.
Well, you mentioned about the playoffs. Now, the Mets are very much in the playoffs, and the Reds are the team that is out of the playoffs. They'd be the fourth team. And the Mets have a 4-game lead in the loss column. I know there's so much time left. I gave the old Willie Stargell line before, Howie. The pennant race begins September 1st. But,
historically, yeah.
Yeah, but do you think the Reds have the ability to catch the teams in front of them?
I think it depends on how those teams in front of them play, too. I don't look at the Reds as being an imposing, hard-charging challenger yet. But if the Mets keep coming back to the pack, that could change and probably will change. Maybe the Cardinals have a run in them, too. Again, there's nothing that appears right now at face value to be imposing behind the Mets. So, I still think that because they're just as close to first place as they are to that first spot out of the postseason, that their sights have to be north rather than south. And they have 7 games left with the Phillies, 3 at Citi Field later this month, 4 in Philadelphia next month. And I think that'll tell a big part of the story.
Yeah, it really will. And those games really should be great. Now, I made that point about the Mets. They only trail Philly by, I think, 3.5 games.
Mm-hmm.
So, that 3.5 games on August 9th. Don't forget, wasn't it August 11th when the Giants were 13.5 behind the Dodgers, 51?
Yeah, well, I can go back to the 69 Mets. They were 9.5 out on the 13th of August.
Whoa.
And they won 38 out of their final 49 and blew past the Cubs. They were 9.5 back on August 13th, and they beat the Cubs out by 8 games. So they were 17.5 games better over their last 49 games, which is almost incomprehensible.
Oh, that's amazing. That really is amazing. I told a story that I went to Baltimore, my first big market, and I had nothing to do for a month till my show started. And the Yankees were 6 games behind Chicago and Baltimore. And but the key is, though, they won their games. So they won a lot of games, and they were able to squeeze past Chicago and Baltimore for
You know what's interesting, John? It's interesting you bring that up because I was just talking to a friend of mine about this yesterday, thinking maybe the Mets can do something similar. Right at this time, that year that you just referenced, 1964, the Yankees brought a kid up to pitch from their Richmond affiliate in the International League named Mel Stottlemyre. We both knew him well, just a wonderful guy.
Fabulous.
And the Mets have a couple of kids that are knocking on the door at Syracuse, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility, and it may hinge in part on what Frankie Montas, as the quote bulk guy, does later today. But, maybe we're a short time away from one of those kids coming up and maybe pulling a Stottlemyre, 61 years later.
Howie, when I read an article today about Sproat and the other...
McLean.
Yeah. I thought, I wonder if they're not going to bring them up. because,
Well,
because of Stoudemire and because of Whitey Ford being brought up 10 years earlier and such.
yeah.
Howie, we have to leave. They're forcing me off the air, and I don't like it.
Well, you're used to that, right?
Yeah, but I want you to come on again, and we can talk further, okay?
Absolutely. Great talking to you, John.
You
Always
too,
great.
Howie. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you indeed. Thanks to John Robnett, Jonas Jackson, and Rich Rattobali. And my thanks to you for listening. And it's been wonderful. I love this show. I really do. This is John Sterling. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The John Sterling Show. You can hear The John Sterling Show Saturdays at 4 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?